Hey, good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday to you. Trying to get people in here and just take attendance. I made a mistake on the tennis remind app, and I told everyone that we were starting at 3:30 today, and I forgot that we obviously had tennis. So, or homeroom. Whoops. Um, Again, I'm supposed to encourage you to have your video on. I know some of you, for various reasons, don't want to, and I'm not going to push it, but I just have to say that to cover myself, obviously. Um, Chat function. I want you guys to post in the chat function the most enjoyable thing that you've done on a Zoom phone call during school in the last 8 weeks. Let's hear it. PC, of course, or PG 13.
Wait, what was the question again?
If you're talking, I just had to turn my thing up. I barely heard it.
Oh, I said, what was the question again?
Oh, what's the favorite thing that you've done on Zoom so far in the last 8 weeks? So those of you that are putting Kahoot, I'd be curious. Is that easy to play on Zoom? I have a million made. I love playing it. I just usually do it when people are in school. Hmm. Nice. All right. Looks like I got 24 here. What am I missing? Brantley. All right. Um. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. In wind ensemble. Okay. Seems like more active stuff. I get that. Sounds good. Got one new message. Ah, yep. All right. Um, Moving on here. Here's what I'm gonna do with you guys. I'm gonna go ahead and share the screen real quick. Had some people confused yesterday, I think, about the week. I don't know why. Every week's pretty much similar. But under modules, folks, you're going to find the textbook reading. which is right here, and you're gonna find your intro, which is due tomorrow at 10:59. Okay. Maybe in class tomorrow, I'll let you guys work a little bit. We'll do something interactive. That sounds like a fun idea. But we got to do some content first. So roll through today, and then I'll find something to do tomorrow. Maybe in some breakout rooms. Okay, something like that. We'll see. And then we'll play Kahoot on Thursday or Friday. I think that sounds good to me. All right. On that note, though, the notes for the week that we do need to cover, like actual content wise, it's kind of fun. So we're moving into the Roman Republic and ancient Rome. I'm sure you guys have heard of this from middle school before, but I'm curious. In the chat function, has anyone actually been to Rome in the class? Sometimes people go there for trips. Got a couple people. Nice. Oh, yeah, that's cool. All right, I've been there twice. And both my experiences were okay, not great. It's a bit of a dirty city, especially today, but the infrastructure isn't so great. Not like it would have been during Roman times, because so many people visit it and they make so much money on tourism. So it's so-so. All right. Ian has a question for you, Francesca, before we start. What was the coolest thing you saw in Rome?
To be honest, I like looking at like all the architecture around everywhere. And like the food was good. Like the food was really good. The only reason I went though is because I have family in Italy, so we just went there for we went there for a day, and like it's like too crowded to really see anything anymore. Like my dad said when he was younger, he would go there and there would not be as many tourists and everything, and he said it was really pretty. But
Yeah.
you can't really see anything anymore because everybody's crowding everything and people just try to sell you stuff and not really as fun. But
I would agree with you. Yeah, it's so touristy. It's almost impossible to go find a meal that's decent too, because my rule is that if there's pictures on the menu, I don't eat there. And they put pictures on almost every menu because it's so touristy. So I would agree with that statement. Interesting though. All right, so here you guys can see what the picture of the Roman Republic would have looked like. Okay, this is called the Roman Forum. This is where each subsequent emperor would try to add a statue or a monument from something that he did. And that ended up being this amazing, like very, very fancy, elegant area, which doesn't look like that now. I'll show you pictures later what it looks like, where the Senate would meet, and then they would have like open air markets where prostitutes would be there trying to entice people. People would be drinking wine, grapes, and it was really kind of a upper class like hangout area, kind of like the Agora in Greece or in Athens, but even fancier. All right, so let's look at the geography real quick. Usually I have people take slot notes, which are just like I give you fill in the blank notes, and the blue words are the ones you fill in. But since you are not here, I'm just going to kind of roll through this, and you guys can always just use this on your quiz, so it's not the end of the world. But the actual physical area of Rome is on the Italian peninsula, which is located in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. It's to the left of the Greek peninsula, okay, or the Balkan peninsula. And it's separated, the Adriatic Sea separates the Greek and Balkan peninsula from the Italian peninsula. The easiest way to remember it is that if you look closely, it looks like a boot, okay, with a stiletto, like a fancy heel. Hard to forget that. Okay. The Alps, you guys can see this area up here on the top left part of the map if you're actually looking. Those are known as the Alps. Very, very rugged terrain. Some of the best skiing in the world. A lot of mineral resources. I've spent a lot of time there, but very difficult to traverse, especially without planes or trains or cars. Along the eastern coast, that's over here, you have what are called the Apennine Mountains. And that kind of separates Rome from the kind of the rest of Italy. And then broad fertile plains in the north and the west. So here and here are basically, you can see where the green areas are, and that's going to be where they can grow some grain, some grapes, but it wasn't particularly great for agriculture, so they had to do a lot of the stuff on their own. All right, so originally this peninsula was occupied by many different groups of people, but the two main groups were Greek colonists, so people that came from Greece, and then the Etruscans. And the Etruscans were people that had migrated down from Central Asia. And so the Etruscans controlled the area of Central Italy and Rome. And around 800 BC, so do your math, about 2,800 years ago, a group of people known as the Latins settled in the area that is now around Rome. They were ancestors of the Etruscans, and they would eventually create what is called the Roman Republic, which will turn into the Roman Empire. Okay. Moving on here. So, according to the mythological creation of the city of Rome, legend has it that two brothers, Romulus and Remus, founded the city. And according to the tale, the twins' mother was a Latin woman and their father was the war god Mars. Who can tell me who Mars is the equivalent to in Greek mythology? Anybody?
Is it Aries?
Aries. Okay. So the fact that they come from the war god Mars, and that their mother was a Latin woman, the Romans thought that the city and themselves came from divine origin. Okay, and this is one of the more famous statues. The boys were abandoned at birth. If you go to this museum that's in my background right here, the yellow one, if you look on my thing right now, if you go to that museum, it's called the Villa Borghese. They have this statue there, and it's two kids sucking the milk out of the breast of I think like a bear type thing, if I remember right. But legend has it that those two founded the city. Okay, so the city itself, if you look here, is a city that's founded on 7 hills around this river known as the Tiber River. And it's pretty neat. Like, even to this day, you can see the 7 hills when you go there. Unfortunately, obviously, there's tons and tons of buildings and different stuff built around it, but they've kept some of it like a park. And basically, this was like a swamp. All this area between these hills was really low level, and the river would flood. But nowadays, they have the river channeled, so it's like they have concrete around the whole river so that it doesn't flood and it stays a lot cleaner. But that gave them like some natural protection, as you can see on the map. All right, so it was in 509 BC that the Romans, or the Latins, finally drove out the Etruscans, who had a monarchy over them or kingship over them. And that's the year, that's kind of a big one that I would jot down. It's the year that Rome was founded by the Latins or the Romans. Okay. And it was the founding fathers, the men who owned land around these 7 hills, that said that they would establish a republic. Okay. So the definition of this is kind of important because we are still considered a public republic today, which is a form of government where people choose some of the officials. All right. Obviously, we've got an election coming up here where we'll get to kind of choose our president, but we know from the Electoral College, it's not totally legit. All right. And they did this because they were sick of having a king. Okay, 509 BC. All right, so here's what the Roman Republic was set up like then. You guys probably want to draw this pyramid and these definitions in your notes unless you're just paying good attention. Okay, so the people who own land were called the patricians, and these were the original landowners around the city of Rome, and they were the only ones that could serve in the Roman Senate, especially for the first couple hundred years, and their ancestors. They were also the generals and like the people that made decisions in the army. The plebeians, the plebs, the rest of the people. Maybe you've heard of someone, oh, you're just a stupid pleb. That's where the word comes from. It's like a diss. If someone calls you a pleb, it's like they're calling you low class. That comes from the idea that in Rome, if you were a plebeian or a pleb, you were a lower class person. You didn't own your own land. Okay. The Senate then was a governing body that voted to make laws. They're the ones that stabbed Julius Caesar. They were only patricians. And then the senators, there were 300 of them. I jot that down. They would choose who would be the 2 patricians. And then only in times of crisis would there be a dictator that was assigned, and the dictator would voluntarily rule, stop an army from invading, or go stop a rebellion, and then was supposed to give back his rule. Okay, as you learned about yesterday, Cincinnatus was the kind of the example of that. Rarely does that work in history, obviously. Okay, so over time, obviously the upper class being very small and the lower class being most and majority, they did not get along. Okay, and so the plebeians or the plebs argued enough that in 494 they got 2 officials that would listen to their complaints and then take them to the Senate. And these officials were supposed to be plebeians, not patricians. And so those positions, the 2 positions that the plebeians had to help represent them and say if the laws were fair for them, were called tribunes. Okay? Tribunes. And you can see in the picture here, poor people going to the tribunes saying, hey, this isn't fair, this isn't fair. You need to protect us. And the rich people, sometimes listened, sometimes did not. All right. In terms of like social structure, the man was the head of the house. The woman was below the man. And over time, women started to receive more rights. And one of the big things that kind of separated life in Rome versus other places we've learned about is all children, regardless of women or men, were taught to read and write. So they valued education more than they valued the ability to fight, like some of the other cultures that we've talked about so far. All right, so obviously this is a little bit different than their counterparts, the Greeks, a little bit more egalitarian. Again, but I'm not saying that they were equal. Men and women were not equal, that's for sure. Okay. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but the Roman gods, Romans were polytheistic, and they copied their gods from the Greek gods. They just gave them Latin names. And so Zeus is the equivalent of Jupiter. Hera is the equivalent of Juno, and Poseidon is the equivalent of Neptune. Okay? Obviously, that would be an issue when Jesus Christ of Nazareth is born and tries to spread the religion of Christianity. And for the Jews, that's going to be a problem, because they're told to worship one God. All right. Moving on here. Okay, the military. The Roman military, we'll look at a map of their expansion, but their military was one of the strongest in history, and it was because they got paid in whatever treasure they kept, kind of like Alexander the Great's army. And so they were broken up into groups of 100 men headed by a centurion, maniples, who were 3 centuries, so 300 men, and then groups of maniples known as legions, who were 6,000 men. And so the centurions and then those who led the maniples and the legions were all patricians, but then the foot soldiers were all plebeians who were trying to get ahead, make more money, and have more land. Maybe it was cattle, sheep, goats, etc. If you lost in your century, like if you lost, 1 in every 10 men would be put to death. And then if you ran away, like in the battle, you would be put to death also. So this allowed them to expand really, really quickly, because everybody had a role and everybody felt like they were important and that they had an opportunity to make money. Now, one other thing to note, these are not full-time soldiers, okay? Some of these men were politicians or just senators, and they would go fight, and they would come back and they'd make laws again or stand around talking about making laws. Most of them were farmers who would then go back and farm after the war or whatever they were trying to accomplish was done. All right. We'll get through a little bit more and call it a day here. So once Rome starts to organize, taking over the rest of Italy happens fairly naturally. So by 270 BC, Rome controlled most of the Italian peninsula, and the only people that could become citizens, like full-time citizens, were people that lived in and around Rome. But they allowed those who paid taxes to keep their own culture, customs, and government as long as they followed the Roman rules and paid taxes. Okay, but their tax was a lot higher than those people who lived around Rome, and they were not considered full citizens. Okay, they weren't completely taken over. Like, they still had some of their own leadership, but they weren't considered full citizens. So you can see how this would lead to some tension. All right, so Rome's biggest rivalry to them becoming the controllers of the Mediterranean Sea was the city-state of Carthage. And talked about this yesterday, but Carthage was in northern Africa. And basically Rome fought them in a series of 3 battles that lasted for 118 years. These are known as the Punic Wars. And By the Third Punic War, Rome destroyed Carthage so much that they salted their fields. If you've ever heard of that before, to salt one's fields means to literally make it so that it's infertile. Like they can no longer grow crops there. And so the first two battles, the Romans took Sicily. I was in Sicily a couple years ago. It's a pretty cool area. Kind of crazy because the Carthaginians controlled them, the Romans controlled it, the Normans from England controlled it, the Muslims controlled it, the Ottoman Empire controlled it, and then the Italians finally controlled it again. So it was a melting pot of cultures there. But that first battle, the Romans took Sicily. Second one, Hannibal almost defeats Rome. And then the third one, the Romans were just being reckless and said, we're going to put an end to Carthage, and they did. And this is what it looks like if you look at this picture. Oh, here's Hannibal trying to bring elephants across the Alps. Showed you guys, I'd show you a picture of this yesterday. This is what happens when you try to take elephants across the Alps. If you look in the picture, I've stayed at a handful of houses and stuff in the Alps in Switzerland and in Austria and southern Germany, in northern Italy, and they're really rugged. Like they don't look like the Appalachian Mountains. They don't even really look like the Rocky Mountains. They're way, way more rugged because when you're in the Rocky Mountains, in Denver starts at a mile high. Denver, you're, when you get to the foothills in Colorado, you're at 7,000 feet high. The Alps, on the other hand, you're at sea level at the bottom of the mountain, okay, or close to it. And then they rise up 6,000 to 8,000 feet from sea level. So they just look extremely treacherous. And you can see here, just even I've skied there out in the Alps 2 or 3 times. It's terrifying. Like at any point, you'd feel like you're going to fall off a cliff. It's not at all like in Colorado, okay, or Utah or Canada. It's nuts. Okay, here's another picture of the elephants. Here's where Rome was. You can see how big Carthage was. You can see in the purple, this was a huge addition for, this is Sicily right here. You can see how big of an addition that is for the Romans. All right, and then here's what Carthage looks like today. What do you guys think? It's pretty, isn't it? Beautiful
It looks
area.
empty.
Yeah, it looks empty. It looks ruined, right? Compared to Rome, yeah. Says they ruined, they basically tried to destroy all pieces of their culture. Okay, Punic Wars. We got someone. Yeah, looks like a big graveyard. I agree, but in the background, you see how pretty the Mediterranean Sea is. It's crazy. All right. Let's keep moving here, though. So, conquests end up bringing so much money to Rome that when they started to grow, they started to take people and move them around as slaves. And so this slave labor ended up hurting the people that were the plebeians, who didn't like necessarily own a bunch of land or rented their land from patricians. And so what happens is, because the slave laborers make the price of goods go down, small farmers end up moving into the cities because the price is so low. And when they move into the cities, it basically causes the Romans to adapt to a model known as bread and circus. Have you guys ever heard of bread and circus before? Can anybody try to explain what bread and circus means? If you're poor, what would you, if you're poor and you wanted moving into, let's say you lost your land and you had to move into the city to try to find like a place to live, you're homeless, and you live in government subsidized apartments, and every other day there's some kind of party in the streets where they give you food and wine and entertainment. Would that make your life seem a little better? Might you be distracted by the fact that your life is absolutely horrible and you don't really own anything? That's kind of the idea, of bread and circus. And so that's where gladiatorial games and the Circus Maximus and all these ideas for entertainment came about in the Roman Republic, and when it switched to an empire, because there were so many poor people that had no opportunity to make money that they needed to provide them with food and entertainment. Okay, so if you ever hear someone saying, "Oh, that's just bread and circus," that just means that they're giving you free food, free entertainment to probably try to convince you of something. Okay, to sell you something or make you believe something. Like your teachers that play Kahoot, they're just trying to convince you to learn. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I mean it's maybe a little true. Anyways, all right. I don't really want to talk about the Gracchus brothers. I mean, basically they're two famous tribunes who, if you guys remember, were supposed to help the poor, and the Senate thought that they were trying to help the poor too much, so they killed them. And this just kind of shows you the fight between the plebeians and the patricians that started over time as Rome continued to grow. All right, so basically then I told you this whole switch from republic to empire is the one that historians argue about the most. But you end up having very, very strong generals who want to have all the power. But then the Senate, who is the 300 men around Rome, in Rome, that get to control laws, want to keep everything at the status quo. That means the same. The same time then, 40% of the population is slaves that don't have their own, like, say at all. And because the people that are in the army are loyal to their commanders, their generals, because they're the ones that give them all the wealth and the land that they could actually accumulate. It's like a power play between the generals and the Senate, like we saw yesterday with Julius Caesar, and then the soldiers that represented the generals. Okay. All right. So if you take a look at the map, you're going to see that by 133 BC, this little area that looks at Rome right there, okay, had now grown to be really quite large, okay, taking over all of the Greek world, okay, what is modern-day Turkey, had taken over parts of Europe and a lot of Spain as well, okay. Insert Julius Caesar, and they're going to have a lot more land, okay. So Julius Caesar, stop with him, okay? We'll kick up the rest tomorrow, I promise you. Okay, Julius Caesar was basically a very well-to-do military general. And when he won basically what's modern-day France, he turns around and marches on Rome instead of, he's called to Rome, and instead of giving in, he marches on the city with his army. And they have no choice but to name him dictator for life in 46 BCE. Okay, and that's going to essentially ruin what was known as a republic. It's going to turn it into like an empire, which is ruled usually with a bureaucracy. Okay, you guys, we talked about the first triumvirate yesterday: Crassus, Pompey, and Julius Caesar. You can see Caesar was the first living man to ever be on a Roman coin. And Caesar did some stuff that was good. Okay. Talked about it a little bit this yesterday. Basically, he took over the whole military. No longer was there like legions that you could just call up. They were all underneath him. War veterans who were poor, who had lost their money, he gave land to. He built all these apartments in in these cities, so that people were no longer homeless. And he extended citizenship to provinces. It's kind of important. So like Jerusalem and areas around the Mediterranean that were basically considered slaves, he now said, okay, you can be a citizen as long as you pay me your taxes. Lastly, then, because he made all these moves, the Senate or the aristocrats said, you're changing way too fast, and they killed him. Okay, stabbed him 23 times in the Roman Forum. So, again, some of these are things that would be kind of important to this day. Like if we made similar moves in our country, it's kind of obviously it's two-sided, but to the common person, he was a hero. To the rich, he was not well liked. All right. We'll go ahead and stop there to this day. That's fine. And I know class gets out in about 5 minutes. I want you guys to have some time between now and the next class. So we'll talk a little more Octavian tomorrow. Cleopatra, interesting, this whole idea, and we'll finish up tomorrow, and then we'll do something else. Okay. Make sure you guys work on your. Remember to work on your module, on the module, work on your intro number 9 tonight. It's due tomorrow if you haven't started it yet, okay? I've got 10 submissions so far. I hope to have a lot more than that. Okay, we just went over a ton of the answers. So, all right, I'm going to leave you guys to have a few minutes to yourself. Do some work if you want to. Go to the bathroom, relax if you want to. And thanks for your participation, everybody. And we'll do some Kahoot or something fun today. Fun the next couple of days, all right? All right, be good. See ya.
See you.
Bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye, guys.